I spent years memorizing license plate patterns as a hobby. It ended up solving my neighbor's murder. The police thought I was insane when I told them the killer's vehicle had a fraudulent plate, but I knew I was right because I'd spent 8 years documenting every license plate pattern in the tri-state area. My name is Lauren Vance, and people have called my hobby everything from quirky to pathological, but nobody could argue with the results when Mrs. Portman's murderer was identified through a registration number I'd recognized from my notebooks. It started in college when I developed this compulsive need to find patterns in chaos, probably some undiagnosed anxiety disorder that my parents couldn't afford to have properly evaluated. I'd sit in parking lots and catalog plate numbers, noticing how certain letter combinations appeared more frequently in specific counties, how the state DMV algorithms generated sequential registrations, how commercial plates followed different patterns than personal vehicles. My roommates thought it was weird but harmless until I started filling notebooks with data instead of doing my coursework. I failed out of engineering school because I was spending 40 hours a week tracking plates instead of attending classes. My boyfriend Ryan left me after 2 years, saying he couldn't build a future with someone obsessed with something so meaningless. He'd found my database of over 50,000 plate numbers and asked what the point was, what I thought I'd accomplish with this information. I couldn't give him an answer that made sense. My parents stopped asking about my life after the third Thanksgiving, where I'd explained my latest discoveries about California's registration system instead of discussing job prospects or normal hobbies. I was working security at a mall, barely making rent on a studio apartment, and spending every spare moment either photographing plates or analyzing patterns in my growing database. I knew it looked pathological from the outside. This 32-year-old woman with boxes of notebooks filled with license plate numbers and state-by-state breakdowns of registration formats. But there was something meditative about the process of cataloging and cross-referencing, finding the hidden structures in what most people saw as random combinations of letters and numbers. I could identify the state and often the county of issue just by looking at a plate's format. I knew which number ranges corresponded to which registration periods, could spot fraudulent or altered plates instantly because they violated the patterns I'd internalized. Friends from college had stopped inviting me to gatherings after I'd spent an entire party discussing the statistical probability of certain letter combinations appearing in Maryland plates. My brother told me I needed professional help, that this obsession was destroying my ability to function in normal society. He was probably right, but I couldn't stop. The patterns made sense in a way that human relationships never did. Each plate told a story if you knew how to read it, when it was issued, where the owner likely lived, whether the registration was current or expired, whether the format matched legitimate state systems or indicated fraud. Mrs. Portman lived in the apartment below mine in a converted house in suburban Philadelphia. She was 73 years old, a retired librarian who'd lost her husband 5 years ago and had no children. She was kind to me in a way most people weren't, never mocking my hobby or treating me as though I was broken. Sometimes she'd ask about my latest discoveries and actually listen when I explained the nuances of how Pennsylvania restructured their commercial plate numbering in 2019. She'd bring me soup when I was sick and I'd help her carry groceries up the stairs. We weren't close exactly, but there was a comfortable neighborliness between us that I valued more than I'd realized until she was gone. She'd told me once that her late husband had collected stamps obsessively, that she understood how pattern-based hobbies could be soothing for certain types of minds. She never used words like obsessive or pathological, just acknowledged that different people found comfort in different things. That acceptance meant more to me than she probably knew. On a Friday morning in October, I left for my security shift at 6 a.m. and saw Mrs. Portman's door slightly ajar. I called her name but got no response. Felt that instinctive concern that something was wrong. I pushed the door open and found her on the kitchen floor in a pool of blood, her head showing obvious trauma from what looked like blunt force. I called 911 immediately. When the police arrived, that's when things took a turn I never expected. Full story is linked below or on my channel.